The stakes have never been higher. The competition has never been stronger. 42 drivers, 25 rounds. One will be crowned champion. Competition, commitment, excitement. This is Lionheart. Tune in Wednesday nights on the iRacing Esports Network to watch the cars and stars of Lionheart, the Lionheart IndyCar Series presented by First Medical Equipment.
This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Many times iRacing can answer the questions what if and why not. What if we raced Formula 1 cars at Le Mans? Well, why not? Hello everyone and welcome to round 11 of the Batteries Not Included Championship here on the Global SimRacing Channel and the iRacing Esports Network. I'm Samuel Ryman and alongside me in the booth is Johan van den Beld. Behind the scenes doing all of the button pushing is our director Sean Ambrose, using camera sets as always provided by Dougie Beard. Johan, all racing fans are familiar with at least the name Le Mans, but let's get down to the nitty-gritty now and show our fans what really truly sets this racetrack apart.
Not a lot of things reach the ripe age of 96 years old, but Circuit de la Sarre surely did. Being built in 1923, the French track is one of the oldest still operating racing facilities in the world, and like a fine French wine, it gets better every year. Now, talking about the historical Le Mans circuit is actually quite difficult, Sam, as throughout the history, the track saw 16 different modifications. It all started, however, with a 17-kilometer circuit in the 1920s, which visited the towns of Le Mans, Mulsanne and Arnache. In interest of safety, numerous changes were made to this layout, creating, after almost 100 years, the 13.6-kilometer track we see today. And being this long, the track features kinda everything you can expect in a track. It has long screaming straights where low downforce and top speed is key. It has sweeping corners where you want as much wing as possible to stick yourself to the ground, and some hard braking points to offer good overtaking opportunities. And when we talk about legendary battles at Circuit de la Sarre, it's basically always a battle from the 24-hour races. Will we get one of those in the Batteries Not Included Championship? Well, we'll take a look at how things stand in qualifying very soon, but first, let's hop on board our own FW31 Williams Formula 1 car for a lap about the track.
All right, we've got Clayton McLeod in the GSRC Williams, so let's do a lap around Le Mans. You're going to get a little speed up on your way towards the Dunlop curve, and despite the downforce on the Williams, you'll still get on the brakes while turning, so you'll need the car nice and planted. Expect some pass attempts into the Dunlop chicane, but drivers will have to be careful not to cut too far inside with how harsh the inner curbs are. Under the Dunlop Bridge, we enter the Chapel Rundown. Ideally, you'll hug the right side for a better entry into the Forest S's. Careful off the hump on the exit before mashing the throttle, and then we tackle Tertre Rouge. It's a quick flick, but carrying your speed off the bend is of the utmost importance. Even with the chicanes, the run down the Mulsanne straight takes forever, and any loss of momentum will hurt you horribly. Eventually, you brake for the Forza chicane. Predictably, the most important thing is to get the best exit you possibly can to once again focus on straight line speed. After another stretch, you come to the Michelin chicane. It's the same thing, but mirrored. Both of these offer great chances to pass, but don't be surprised if someone returns the favor at the next braking zone. Mulsanne Corner is another one that has a slightly awkward entry, really testing your trail braking prowess. But you're not done with a flat-out blast yet, because it's another long run towards Indianapolis. This is perhaps the most difficult corner entry of the lap, with a fast kink and heavy braking. Make sure to tuck it in on the banking, and then hold to the left for Arnage. The wall at the exit narrows up quick, so try not to swing too wide. Up to the Porsche curves, things start to get very technical. Though there isn't much braking, you've got to work hard to keep the racing line so as not to lose time. It's comparable to sequences like the S's at Suzuka or Mackett's Beckett's at Silverstone. Eventually, you'll hold off to the right on your way into karting and try your best not to get a slowdown penalty by running too far wide on the exit. Straighten out Maison Blanche, and then you've got the Ford chicane. The first part is much quicker than the second, but still requires you to set up the car more so for the final two apexes. You can climb the blue and yellow curbs, but not the red one. As we come back to the pit straight, hopefully you've now finished a lap around Le Mans.
F1 cars on a sports car course. What else could you ask for? The iRacing Esports Network has it all. You'll see plenty of NASCAR, IndyCar, Formula One, sports car racing all year long. Be sure to subscribe to them. See what other crazy combinations we can come up with here on iRacing. I'll tell you, we're in for a special one here at the Circuit de la Sarthe today. Alright, with that being said, Johan, let's take a look at what these drivers are up against as we're nearing the end of the season.
This is the penultimate race of our Season 1 Championship of 2019. Round 11 of 12 is here today in France. There's 4 watermarks, as you can see behind it. That means that the 4 worst results of each driver this season will be removed. 4 drop weeks are allowed. The race length, however, here in France is 15 laps. That usually means that there's a very small pit window. With lap times of around 3 minutes, I wouldn't be surprised if all the drivers come in roughly the same time. They have to do that because there's a 67% fuel tank. The fuel tanks are slightly limited to enforce one pit stop. The setups for the drivers are open. There's no incident cap for the drivers, but the admins will keep it in mind for people abusing it. And official iRacing points will be used here today.
Alright, well, you just mentioned it. It is the penultimate round of the season. That means drivers are paying close attention to where they sit in the championship. So that's what we're going to take a look at right now, with the top few names being close all season long. Marcusha has broken away a little bit. However, he is not in a session right now. Now, a win will pay about 80 points, so Thomas Ziegler and Clayton McLeod, if they finish with good results today, could definitely close up with Usha on the championship, who, as we've been mentioning all season long, doesn't have any drop weeks he can fall back on. And that could definitely tighten things up heading into our season finale at Spa. Because Ziegler and McLeod are here, and they were both fast in practice. They're both fast in qualifying right now. Scott Newton and Neil Andrews, you also see rounding out your top 5 driver standings graphics there. Now, we mentioned qualifying. Normally, we're starting qualifying right around now. However, because the Circuit de la Sarthe is such a long circuit, they have actually shortened the practice time for today and lengthened the qualifying time to give the drivers more opportunities to get a clean lap in. Because there's some drivers out there, Marco Sanfilippo has been one of them, who has a lot of pace, but he's yet to be able to turn a clean lap around this ever-long circuit, and so he'll be grateful for those extra few minutes that we've had tacked on, Johan.
Yeah, absolutely. Marco is a great example of that. He was P2 in qualifying, but as you can see on screen now, we're following, and he's nearing the end of the lap. Around 30 seconds more, we can see if this is actually a lap time for him. His first lap time, because he didn't manage a single one yet, and then he goes from P2 to roughly P11 on the grid. So it's important for Marco Sanfilippo to actually finish this lap. Let's actually stay on board with him now with this shot. This is a great shot. You can see his hands working as he's reaching the final two chicanes. A double one. First one's a little bit easier, I always find. You can take a lot of speed, but this next one is very acute, very difficult curbstones to mangle with this twitchy Formula 1 car. So he gets back on the throttle over the start-finish line. That is must have had an off-track somewhere in that lap. So luckily for Marco Sanfilippo, he has 7 minutes, which is roughly 2 or 3 opportunities left for a lap, although he almost cut the corner there as well. So that's one of the drivers that really has to step on it to get a good qualifying position. A driver that got a good qualifying position just now, Scott Newton. He just came across the start-finish line getting P2 with 305 points.
Yeah, Scott Newton out on track, currently sitting 3/10 behind Thomas Ziegler. Normally we'd say, oh, you know, it's a little bit off the pace, but really around this long circuit, 3/10 is almost nothing. It's only going to be a 15-lap race today, which is probably going to mean a very narrow fuel window, Johan. Expect pit stops, I would guesstimate around laps 6 to 9 or so.
Yeah, I think so as well. You have a 67% fuel tank on these Williams Formula 1 cars. So lap 6, lap 9, that's really the open window that you have. And like I said in the race description, that probably means that all those drivers will come in roughly the same time. We're looking now at Scott Newton. He's driving around in P2, but maybe we can focus a little bit on Thomas Ziegler. He just had a little spin. I didn't want to focus on that. I kind of wanted to focus on his qualifying time so far, because he was the only driver with a 304.
And he just got knocked off. Sorry, Johan. Clayton McLeod to the top.
Yeah, Clayton McLeod kind of ruined my intro there to Thomas Ziegler. Clayton McLeod just went to the pole, but Thomas Ziegler was the quickest driver in practice, still very quick in practice, and we didn't see Thomas Ziegler getting a win yet compared to other drivers that are fighting for the title, like Clayton McLeod and Mark Asher. So we might actually see Thomas Ziegler finally getting his first win of the season. He's looking very good today here in France.
Going to stay on board Ziegler, see if he can improve on his lap time. Only 5 thousandths of a second off of Clayton McLeod. Honestly, it's very close at the top of the standings right now. Top 4 cars all covered within 6/10 of a second around this very long Circuit de la Sarre. So these are it's definitely impressive to see these lap times so close together for what is essentially a 3-minute lap. And do the math there, 3 minutes a lap, a 15-lap race. This is going to still be about your average race length, 45 to 50 minutes. So these drivers are used to this, and we'll see which one of them can come out on top today. See which one of them can come out on top on qualifying. Obviously, they have the Molson Straight where they can pull off slipstream and draft opportunities, but do you want to risk it? You know, if you start second or third on the grid and you're not leading through the S's on your way to the Molson Straight, maybe you could get in that aero wake and lose some time and lose the opportunity of a slipstream pass. So Ziegler might want to take pole position to avoid being able to do that, and as he comes across the line, he's not able to improve.
Not able to improve. You can see him there going through the last chicane, making a little bit mistake, missing the apex completely. He's setting himself up now with probably one of his only chances left to get that qualifying P1 position. Actually, he's been relegated just now to P3. Scott Newton went over the line. He put in the quickest qualifying lap. You can see it on top of the screen, a 3:04.5. Scott immediately resetted his car to go to the pits and try it one more time with new tires. But that's a really strong qualifying performance for Scott, who is now 4/10 clear of Clayton McLeod.
And as we approach just 3 minutes left in this qualifying session, only really enough time for drivers to complete one more lap or two if they hit the start-finish line at just the right moment. And now still 3 cars who I've all seen out there on track in qualifying. Manuel Gomez Esteban, Rolf Droost and Marco Sanfilippo, who are still trying to set a time.
They're not really. It's not really working for them yet to get a qualifying time. We are looking on screen at Andrew Adair Sanders. He's one of the drivers that did get a qualifying time, 3:10.2. It's his quickest lap time so far. He was 3 seconds quicker than he was in practice with that lap time. But as you say, Sam, 3 drivers that didn't manage a qualifying time yet, and especially Marco Sanfilippo. We talked about it earlier today. He had that really quick time in practice. It'll be interesting to see if he can actually manage a qualifying time as well, because I'm very curious where he will end up on the grid if he actually manages to get a qualifying time.
Oh, we might find out in just a couple moments, because Marco Sanfilippo's working his way through the last few turns right now. We continue to see if Andrew Adair Saunders will be able to pick it up from 8th place. He's currently the slowest driver to have set a time in qualifying, but only a couple of tenths off of Danilo Sanfilippo, sitting 7th ahead of him right now. And as he comes across the line, he improves his time, but not his position. Here goes Marco Sanfilippo. Is he able to get a time in? No, but he's got enough time for one more lap.
One more opportunity for him to get a qualifying time. Now, another driver that I'm seeing driving around is, well, Scott Newton, we're just following him, but another driver that is back from before is Tommy Mikael Nhola. He's the driver that's currently sitting in P4. Good qualifying time from Tommy. We just saw him in the Lotus 49 broadcast, but here in these quicker or newer Formula 1 cars, he's also not doing a bad job. A 3:05.5. That sets him P4 currently on the grid as he actually resets his car there. We go back to Scott Newton, but a good qualifying effort from Tommy so far. And he's only 1 second away from Scott Newton. So let's see where Tommy can bring his car. Maybe snatch away a podium here and steal some points from those championship contestants.
Yeah, well, he's not going to qualify any better than 4th now after taking a tow to the pits with only 1 minute left in the session. Scott Newton doesn't really have a whole lot of contenders out there still fighting him for this pole. And let's not forget, with Mark Usher not being here, Scott Newton could definitely make some inroads in the championship today. We'll see if he's able to take a victory today, how much that will move him up in the standings heading into our finale next week at Spa. Things going good for him so far with a 0.3 of a second gap over Clayton McLeod. And we've seen 3 different groups kind of here in qualifying right now, Johan. The top 4 have separated themselves about 3 seconds from the next set of 4 cars, and then the 3 cars behind them haven't set a time. So we'll have to see how that pans out during the race.
Absolutely. The big gap between the first 2 groups is between Tommy Mikael Nhola and Reed Miller, who's currently best of the rest. Reed Miller already stopped doing his qualifying efforts. Sanfilippo is part of that middle group as well. But like I say, Manuel Gomez, Esteban Rolf, just Marco Sanfilippo, those are the 3 drivers that didn't manage a qualifying time. But that doesn't mean that they actually belong on the back of the grid. Like we said, Marco is one of the quicker drivers in practice. He actually might be one of the drivers that should be in the top group of the grid. And he has to fight his way forward then when the race gets underway. Manuel Gomez Esteban is coming across the start-finish line. Let's see if he actually manages a lap time. He doesn't. At least he could complete 1 lap, see how this car feels on the track. Looking at the temperature, it's quite a hot one today, Sam. 39 degrees Celsius, partly cloudy, very sunny conditions here at front. So you can see at the top of the screen, 102 degrees Fahrenheit. Quite a warm track here today. Not a lot of wind, however. Those hot track temperatures will mean that the tires will be slippery.
So Manuel Gomez Esteban, I think it was on an outlap, but I'm not sure if he had a connection issue or something, but he was disconnected from the server at some point during qualifying, so that might explain why he wasn't able to turn a competitive lap time. Rolf Joost, I haven't seen on the track a little bit, but Marco Sanfilippo, can he finally get a lap in right at the time of asking across the line? Yes, he does, and it puts him 4th. So Marco Sanfilippo on row number 2.
Means that Tommy Mikael Nhola is relegated 1 position. He will now start the race in P5. I don't think that Tommy, who's currently driving around, I think that's on the run line towards Indianapolis, doesn't have enough time to complete the lap. Of Scott Newton, he is still on track as well. But like you said, Scott Newton, he doesn't have anything to fear from Clayton McLeod or Thomas Seeger. Those 2 drivers are done with qualifying.
I took a look back, and I think this is a hot lap for Tommy Mikael Nhola, but it's not going to help him because he ran a little bit wide at Indianapolis. And he's going to have to gain 3/10 if he wants to get back on the second row ahead of Marco Sanfilippo, but he's looking a little bit off the pace. So this guy looks like your pole sitter here today, Scott Newton. He's done well in qualifying in recent rounds, been able to put it together as well. A couple of wins throughout the season. Looking for another one here today with just 2 rounds left to go in the championship. Markusha looking good in the points, but how will things stand today? We're just a couple of minutes away from finding out. Scott Newton comes across the line and improves his time. And Tommy and Hola had a big crash, but yeah, nice lap by Scott Newton.
8/10 clear of the rest, but Scott Newton qualifying well, that shouldn't be surprising. The whole season, every race that he participated in, he qualified on the front row, and today here at Le Mans, it's no different. Scott Newton again with a good qualifying, but let's see if he actually can capitalize on that. That is actually one of the things that he struggled with, as we see Danilo Sanfilippo coming across the line, improving to a 3:08.4. That moves him up to P6.
Yeah, still about 3 seconds back of a car in front, though. 5 cars in that first time, in the first group, kind of, and then a bit of a gap to the 4 drivers behind them. Well, the track is quiet right now, so let's go ahead and take a look at our full starting order. It's going to be Scott Newton and Clayton McLeod that's starting on the front row of a grid, 0.8 of a second between them. Newton definitely winning qualifying. Behind them, Thomas Ziegler and Marco Sanfilippo will be starting 3rd and 4th ahead of Tommy Mikel Unhola. And that's where that's when we hit a bit of a break there, Johan.
Yeah, the gap between Tommy Mikel Unhola and Danilo Sanfilippo is around 3 seconds, like you mentioned. Danilo starts the race best of the rest, P6 outside of row 3. The gap behind Danilo is not that big, only 0.2 of a second behind him. You can find Reed Miller. He starts the race in P7, and he starts on the inside of row 4, being flanked by Stefan Henkel. On row 5 we can find the last driver with a time set in qualifying, Andrew Adair Sanders, with a 3:10.1. He starts the race in P9, and there's 2 drivers that didn't manage a qualifying time. Rolf Just starts the race without a time in P10, and on the last row of the grid, row number 6, is Manuel Gomez Esteban. He starts the race in P11.
And the qualifying session finally finishes here at the Circuit de la Sarthe, and it is time to go racing. We've got 11 cars here for a 15-lap race, but it's a critical race in terms of a championship. 5 drivers turned a lap time within 1.5 seconds of each other in qualifying, so who knows who's going to be able to take away this one. And there's probably going to be a lot of fighting on track with that narrow pit window, and we're getting things started off with a flyover here at Le Mans. Right, a lot of the cars already gridded up. They want to go racing, and who can blame them? Just 2 rounds left to try and steal a win before the end of this championship. They'll be back with us next season here on GSRC, but right now none of these guys thinking about next season. They're all thinking about this season, in particular today. What can they do? Especially, what can our championship contenders do to try and claw back some of those points from Markusha heading into next week's finale at Spa? It'll be Scott Newton starting from the pole ahead of Clayton McLeod and Thomas Ziegler. All 3 were on that points graphic we showed you at the top of the show. Looks like we're just waiting for Andrew and Saunders to grid up, and we will be underway. 30 seconds left until the gridding time is over, and the engines will rev up anyway, whether we have all the cars on the grid or not. They're going to try and navigate their way through the curves out onto the Mulsanne Straight, where there's going to be plenty of passing opportunities. Expect the speeds down the Mulsanne Straight into those chicanes to far exceed 200 miles an hour as the lights are off, and away they go. And it's already a nice drag race between our 2 leaders. And look at Tommy Unhola, great start from 5th. He's already in 3rd. He might be looking for 2nd on Clayton McLeod down the inside. What a great start by Unhola.
You can nickname him the Arrow now. What a great start from him. But behind him, Marco Sanfilippo as well had a good start, getting by Thomas Seeger, who's getting relegated 2 places immediately. While in the meantime, Scott Newton is streaking away as they're going through the S's towards the Tetra Rouge. He is already almost a second in front of Clayton McLeod as they go towards the back straight.
That's exactly what Scott Newton needed to do. He knew that there was a chance that the cars could get a slipstream, get a draft on him down the Mulsanne straight and be able to pass him. You can see actually our race leaders going defensive on down the back straight as we see this battle for third. Marco Sanfilippo taking a position back from Tommy Unhola. So right now it's Newton, McLeod, Marco Sanfilippo who gets loose over the curbs, and now he's going to be attacked again by Unhola in fourth.
Shame for Marco Sanfilippo, who set himself perfectly up for a move on Clayton McLeod if he didn't make the mistake. Now he's the one being overtaken. It's Tommy Unhola on the inside towards the second chicane here on the long straight where really you don't need a lot of downforce. You really want to utilize top speed as much as possible. 340 kilometers an hour easily Unhola. He hucks it around the inside, gets by him as they get going again towards Mulsanne.
That was Reed Miller going off in the background, and he's going to pay a penalty for that. He's going to have to serve a slowdown. This scrap for third place has allowed Thomas Ziege to reel them both back in, knowing where he is in the championship. Ziege's got to find a way by these two guys, but right now there's not enough space, although third and fourth almost come together. Ziege's going to want to get by soon. He's now looking on the inside of Marco Sanfilippo, coming out of a hairpin.
And 2 dogs fight around the bone. It's the third one going away with it, and it looks like Thomas Seeger is that person. He's now on the inside of Marco Sanfilippo as they're going towards Indianapolis. He will have a short kick to the right. Oh, he actually backs out of it. He could have profited from the draft of Tommy Unhola, but he thinks the better of it. He doesn't want to put too much fighting pressure on it as the two in front of them are fighting very close. They're almost destroying his front ring, Thomas Seeger was, on the rear tires of Marco Sanfilippo as they go, single foul. Missing the apex there, Marco. It's really hectic here in the first opening lap. And this is really, like you mentioned, Sam, good news for Clayton McLeod and Scott Newton, who can just drive away from the rest.
Well, it would be good news for Clayton McLeod if he hadn't made a mistake at the same turn as well. He had been able to pull away from this pack, but an error from the league organisers kind of brought him back into this scrap going on from third place. And this goes all the way back to about 7th position. All these guys close together. Nowhere to be seen is Scott Newton, who at the end of the first lap, I'm going to say, has already about a 3 or 4 second lead.
Yes, Scott Newton is gone now. You can see on screen the battle with Clayton McLeod. He's being followed closer now by Tommy Unhola. The Finn is really looking feisty in these Williams Formula 1 cars. He had an amazing start all the way from P5, immediately gained 2 positions. He's now right on the tail of Clayton McLeod to make it a 3rd position. Elevate himself to P2 through the Dunlop chicane. Here it is Thomas Seeger behind him, who's being dropped a little bit. So it's really P2, P3 and P4 that are close together. Reaching towards the S's, you really need a good run here and don't make any mistakes. And set yourself up for a run over the long straight. All 3 drivers having a good run. Well, Marco Sanfilippo got very wide there. That actually might have cost him a little bit. But Tommy Unhola, he had a good run from there. He will slowly be chewing down the deficit to Clayton McLeod.
As they go back on down the back straight, hitting 220 miles an hour, but still not fast enough to catch our race leader, Scott Newton, who had a 5.5 second lead at the end of lap number 1. The battle is on for 7th, and Drew Adair Saunders looking on the outside of Reed Miller. Reed Miller overshot one of the chicanes last lap, but cost him time in the form of a slowdown penalty. That battle allows Stefan Henkel, who is coming back after a 2 months break. He's in 9th place. He's rejoining this little scrap.
Yeah, because of that small mistake of Reed Miller, the whole mid-battle that basically reached from P2 to P9 is now broken up between Danilo Sanfilippo and Reed Miller. There's a big gap between those two. Let's go back to the podium positions. Marco Sanfilippo and Tommy Unhola, they are still chasing down Clayton McLeod. No track positions, however, but as they reach Mulsanne, it's very close between Marco and Tommy Unhola. Closing down the gap with Marco very quickly, but he chooses to brake a little bit earlier. He has to brake for this maneuver, so he brakes a lot later than the Finnish rifle. That gives Thomas Seeger an opportunity. He dives to the inside, gets that position, but Marco now is fully in the draft as they go towards Indianapolis.
So Ziegler's in the position he wants to be, and even down this straight here, you don't always think of it as a long straight here at Le Mans, but they're hitting 215 miles an hour. That's about as quick as the average lap time doing a race at the Indianapolis 500. So these guys are really hauling it, and that's why we see so many of these drivers overshooting the turns, especially early in the race when the tyres are cold. This is where McLeod got it wrong last lap. Everyone gets through smoothly this time, although no, the Sanfilippo's.
Danilo Sanfilippo spins it around, little half spin. Don't think he will lose. No, he will lose the position to Stefan Henkel. He will be thrown down in the battle now with Henkel and Adair Sanders. We go to a replay of that. He was right behind his family member Marco Sanfilippo. Who, as we go to, we stay on the battle for now. Into Adair Sanders to go to the Porsche cars. Great move from Andrew there to just stay on the inside, forced to take the position away from Danilo. Now it's calmed down, we can go to the replay of that incident. Danilo was right on the tails of Marco Sanfilippo. They were very close together because Marco had to serve a small slowdown penalty. And as they were close together, as they went on the exit of Anash, just a little bit too much throttle for Danilo Sanfilippo. One more corner to the right, and you can just see him putting too much throttle on the car, looping it around. Now luckily for him, he did keep it out of the wall. It cost him a few positions.
Yeah, so some drivers came off a bit worse that lap. Which drivers benefited from it all? Well, how about Stefan Henkel? At the end of lap 1, he was in 9th place. He is now running in 6th position. Granted, he's got a bit of pressure from behind him. Also, our race leader, Scott Newton, after the first 2 laps of action behind him, now has a 7.5 second lead.
Reed Miller is the first driver to visit this pit crew because he had some damage. He looped it around twice, had some front wing damage, took the toe, and he's sitting in the pits with a long toe, of course, on this long track. So it will be a while before we see Reed Miller out on track. Now the battle, as you can see on screen, this is the battle for P4. Marco Sanfilippo on the inside of Tommy Niconola with a great start, but is falling back a little bit. Misses the chicane as he tried to go side by side through there. Marco Sanfilippo, too eager! Actually spins it around, hit each other!
And those two, well, Tommy continues, Marco will be out, and that's very unfortunate for both of them, obviously. But fact was, Unhola got a slowdown penalty, so he could have been off, taking it easy. I mean, I'm sure he would have got a slowdown penalty for cutting the chicane there. Wouldn't have had to have been in that incident. Unfortunately, he kind of zigged when he probably should have zagged. And a battle that was over, unfortunately, ended up in quite an expensive mess there. So Unhola's going to continue, but he does have pretty substantial damage to his car. He's about 10 miles an hour slower than his competitors behind him going down the straight.
And he's being chased down quickly by Stefan Henkel, Danilo Sanfilippo, and Andrew Adair Sanders. So he will drop down all the way, I think, to P7 that will be. As Tommy gets overtaken and chased down quickly by them. Now, unlucky for Tommy as well is that after that incident, it's of course a very narrow pit window here with the long parts of the track that you're on full throttle, the long lap times that you have. So it's not like Tommy can just go in and service pit stop, repair his car right at the time that he normally could come in. If he wants to repair his car, he really needs to take 2 pit stops. That will cost him a lot of time. You can see behind him Stefan Henkel has completely caught up with him now. He is in the draft of the Finn. As this battle stretches out slightly as they come out of a Nash.
Yeah, and Andrew Adair Sanders got by Danilo Sanfilippo in Indianapolis. Danilo overshot that turn, so that position changed. All right, what's going to happen here?
So one thing is our leader making a big mistake or small mistake. Scott Newton there outbraking himself as he comes to the final chicane. He has to serve a slowdown penalty. Now I don't think he hit one of those big curbstones that you have separating it. That must have been a very hairy moment for Scott Newton. He actually continues.
And here comes Unhola into the pits. Newton still holding about a 7.5 second lead, so hasn't lost too much time out of that. So Newton does get out of the way, but it does mean that his presence has really bunched these guys up, and Danilo Sanfilippo trying to take that position back that he lost in Indianapolis when he made the mistake. So Danilo Sanfilippo back up into 5th place, and Drew Adair Sanders down to, and off goes Henkel. So they'll both gain one. Stephen Henkel who had gone from 9th to 6th to 4th, now falls back to 6th.
Just a little bit too happy on the throttle in the middle of the Dunlop chicane. You can go to a replay of that incident. You can see him just trying to go following over the start-finish line. He actually has a good run through the first Dunlop curve. He doesn't have to worry too much for the two drivers behind him as they're fighting with each other. And as he goes around the first Dunlop curve in the first apex of the chicane, he's a little bit too happy, loops it around. And luckily for him, he didn't have any damage. He can continue, but he loses a few positions. Now back to P6. And behind them, you can actually see Rolf just actually caught up with him because of that little incident. Stefan Henkel is swerving around the Mulsanne straight, trying to see if he has any damage on his front wing, because when he redoored the track, he went over one of those big curbstones, Sam. Actually might have given him a little bit of damage on his front wing, and Rolf just is trying to profit from that. He is now in the draft of Stefan Henkel, trying to close him down. Elevated after P7.
Yeah, really hadn't gave Juice a shout out yet. He had just been rolling along, and now he is up in 7th position here in the early stages. So it looks like Reid Miller hasn't came back out on track. Tommy Unhola has. And Marco Sanfilippo is disconnected from the server, so he's out of a race. And definitely a lot of action in these opening 3 or 4 laps here, Johan. And timing the score in at the top of your screen will show you where things are as they stand. You can see Scott Newton has been able to recover from his mistake last lap and has pulled his lead back out to 8 seconds over Clayton McLeod.
And the gap between Clayton McLeod and Thomas Seeger, it almost seems like it's shrinking a little bit this lap. Only 2.6 seconds between the two. Like you said, Scott Newton is driving away from Clayton McLeod, but I think that Clayton McLeod mostly has to look in his rearview mirror to Thomas Seeger. Well, interestingly, we've been talking the whole season about Mark Usher, the driver that when he shows up, he wins the race. He has a 100% win rate this season. Now he isn't here, and that really puts the pressure on Clayton McLeod and Thomas Seeger. They really have to perform and get that win if they want to have any chance to beat Mark Usher during the last round of the season next week. And you can see Thomas Seeger getting closer and closer to Clayton McLeod in the background. Both these drivers really are fighting it out with each other. They probably thought before this race that it was for P2 in the championship, but with Mark Usher not being here, it is maybe for the championship title.
Let's not discredit what Newton is doing. I mean, obviously he's dominating this race right now, but he's had 2 wins this season himself. He'll be looking for a 3rd, but his last 2 races have not gone to plan. He did an astounding performance at Donington, where he finished to 2nd place after basically coming back from around 14th or so, I think he fell back to. And then last week at Indianapolis, he was pretty much guaranteed a 2nd place finish, spun and would have got away with it, but beached his car over a curb. So a lot of bad luck recently for Scott Newton, or mistakes that have really came off poorly, but great driving otherwise. And if he can keep it clean today, and he doesn't have any pressure from behind, so I shouldn't have to knock on wood there, he should be able to walk away with his 3rd W, but we're still on lap 5, still a long ways to go here at Le Mans.
Let's go back a little bit to Thomas Seeger, but Thomas Seeger had like a big moment last time out, coming out of the Asa chicane, actually hit the wall quite hard. That's our P3 driver. And he's still going. I wouldn't be surprised to see Thomas Seeger going to the pits. He's actually grabbing over the straight a little bit now. I think that Thomas Seeger might have terminal damage there on the suspension, because look at how he's driving over the straight. He actually goes into the wall. That is actually race over for Thomas Seeger because of that incident they had a few quarters ago. And that is huge in the championship, because Clayton McLeod now is released from all the pressure he had. We can see it here on screen what happened. He's maybe a little bit too far forward. We can go back 30 seconds. We can see what happened with him. It already happened. He took too much speed through the S's. You can see it here, too much speed, tries to brake a little bit, but it's just a little bit too late and hits the wall hard, and that really damaged the suspension. As you could see on the straight, car just doesn't go in a straight line anymore. And that's the race over for the DH driver, because that's a lot of repairs that he has to take once he's finishing towing his car to the...
Yeah, and now we get this onboard view that we were watching before. You can see just how much the car was crabbing. This was going in a straight line, and I think he gets through the first chicane okay, but it was under braking for the second chicane down the Smolson straight that he ends up putting it in the wall, and he has now officially disconnected from the server and is out of a race. That will be our third driver out, I think. Well, I don't know if Reed Miller will get back out on track. He's still in server. But watch what happens to Zieg under braking here. He's struggling enough just to get going in a straight line, and then under braking he put it in the wall. Now we go back to live action. So Zieg out from third place and moves Danilo Sanfilippo up onto a podium spot. And there you see there Scott Newton doing what he does best with another fastest lap.
Sorry, a huge crash a few moments ago by Tommy, Miko and Hola. He actually flipped his car coming out of the chicanes on the Mulsanne straight. I don't know if you can go to that, but he's currently sitting on the pitch. And the crash of him reminded me of, well, basically what happened with Marco Sanfilippo a little while ago. And I think that Tommy is indeed our third retiree of today.
So Tommy and Hola already have been having a bad race with that collision with Marco Sanfilippo earlier on. So this would actually be our fourth car out, joining Ziga, Unhola, Marco Sanfilippo and Reed Miller. So quite some attrition today. I wonder if those hot track temperatures, what you were talking about, Johan, have something to do with that. And as we get a replay of here of what happened to Tommy and Hola, oh, he might have been caught off guard by the car making a mistake in front of him.
Yeah, there was a car in front of him making a mistake, but then coming out of the chicane with no interference of the car in front of him. I think it was Manuel Gomez Esteban. We go a little bit back to see what happened with Manuel Gomez Esteban, because you could see that car looping it around in that chicane. And then once Tommy, Miko and Hola passed him, just was too eager on the throttle, it almost seems like. And that really looped him around hard into the wall and flipped it.
And we've lost a fifth car, not from a crash. Andrew Saunders has lost the connection, and that's a shame, because even though he was running towards the back, he had a clean race and been able to make up several positions. Now, we might be able to rejoin, and one nice thing about Le Mans is the track is so big that even if you do lose a connection for a couple of minutes and come back, you'll only be one lap down. But, man, a lot of attrition, really, at a race where I didn't think we'd be having it. Let's find out exactly what's going on. We have Tommy Unhola here for an interview. We might be able to find out. And Tommy, things have been tricky. Not just for you, but we've seen a lot of cars spinning off. Is it the track temperature? What's going on out there?
Well, actually, I don't know what's causing it. For me, it was like a practice. Well, it was going really well, better than I expected, as I didn't get practice at all before this session, and actually not even full lap, so I was only trying to drive safely, and I saw that car crashing in front of me, but I didn't see it anymore when I got closer, and I went as left as I could, but I think a car bounced from a rail or something as. Yeah, and my car was broken after that. I pitted on that lap and got new nose, but something was broken. It didn't want to turn, and I tried to drive it, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, so unfortunately, not a lot of great things you can take away from this race. Obviously, it hasn't ended well. But the start you got was electrifying. Fifth to third, straight off the bat. You almost got second. Do you want to talk us through that?
Yeah, it was a very good start, as I had time to take a couple practice starts, and actually I don't know if any of those went as well. And car in front of me moved right away, so, and I got much better start, so I moved to left and right into left side, so others could do what they wanted, and I knew I was gonna pass that row, and I was a bit too careful in the first chicane, but it's better that way, as I didn't have so much practice, and I didn't want to hit anyone, as and it's not bad to overtake a couple cars, but it would have been nice to take one more.
Alright, and we see scheduled pit stop starting on screen right now. And our race leader's gone off. Scott Newton just overshot a turn. That's going to cost him a couple of seconds. He was holding a 13-second lead over Clayton McLeod. We'll get a replay of that up for our fans. But thanks for coming to talk to us, Tommy, and hopefully we'll see you next week at the finale in Spa.
Yeah, I hope so. I just want to mention that I had almost all the fueling, so it would have been nice to see how it would have gone, as I would have pitted after these guys. But yeah, I hope to make it next week, as I want to make both of these races, but I'm actually gonna drive in Sebring too, so I told teammates that I'm not gonna start in that one, as there is a couple races I wanna do, but let's see how it goes.
Alright, well, thanks again, Tommy, and commiserations on being out, but thanks for coming to talk to us.
Yes, thank you guys, and have fun.
Well, one driver not having too much fun right now, Johan, is Scott Newton. That off cost him a lot of time. He had a 13-second lead, now just 7 seconds.
And the interesting thing, though, is that with Scott Newton, this is the second mistake that we saw him make on screen, but not with a lot of pressure behind him. It's really driving on his own, actually quite a bit quicker than the rest of his rivals. He's still making a few mistakes. And of course, both times it was just a little bit of a spin, a little bit of a time loss, but he needs to bring it home. It's not the first time that we see Scott Newton actually lead a race, being very far up the grid, as he opts to go for another lap, doesn't make a pit stop now, and just make a few mistakes that cost him a lot of time. We've also seen him make mistakes like that actually send him a few places back on the grid. And, well, let's hope if he can actually keep it clean from now on and stay in front of his rivals. Like you said, the gap between him and Clayton McLeod was back to 7 seconds. However, Scott Newton is really pace-wise a class on his own today. As Clayton McLeod comes over start-finish line, the gap is already back to 9.1 seconds. So he doesn't have to fear anything from his rivals on track, I would say, Scott Newton. He really has something to fear from himself.
Yeah, and that gap, 9 seconds between Newton and McLeod, is the closest any two drivers are on track right now. We started with 11 cars, it has thinned down to 6. Scott Newton, Clayton McLeod, Danilo Sanfilippo, Stefan Henkel, Rolf Joost and Manuel Gomez Esteban. Now, I'm not going to say out of a race, but off the lead lap and in the garage are Tommy Unhola, Thomas Ziegler, Andrew Adair Saunders, Marco Sanfilippo and Reed Miller. The one of those that could be about to change is Andrew Adair Saunders, because he's only in the garage because he lost the connection, and I saw that he just rejoined the server, so he might want to get it back out there, because at the rate this race is going, he might be able to get top 5 a couple of laps down.
Exactly, there's some good positions up for him as Danilo Sanfilippo just came in from his pit stop, comes out on the track. Now Danilo is actually an interesting driver because he's inherited a podium position with everything that happened with Tommy Mikonhola, with Thomas Seeger, the driver that was P5, P6 at the beginning of the race, now actually on his way for a podium position. He and Stefan Henkel are the two drivers that already came in for the pit stop, as Rolf just also is coming in to visit this pit crew, get some new tires and some new fuel for the end of the race. And one of the things that I thought was interesting, Sam, what Tommy just told us for his strategy, is that he filled his car completely at the beginning of the race. He would have run it as long as possible, run it dry, and then go for a splash and dash at the end of the race. And that just really amplifies how quick he was at the start, how good he was at the start, with such a heavy fueled car, having such an incredible start, and also keeping other drivers, other rivals behind him the way he was doing. It was really impressive. It's a shame that his race ended prematurely, because I would have been very curious to see where he could have ended up in the end.
I almost wonder sometimes if having a heavier fuel tank kind of allows your car to get better rear grip off of a line. I wonder if it actually played to Unhola's advantage here. Because I know sometimes I got one of those mid-sized pickup trucks over here in the States, and if I don't have any fuel or anything sitting in the tailgate, sometimes in the wet, if I push the gas pedal, the rear tires say, no, we ain't doing this. I wonder if this car has that similar kind of problem with the amount of power going to the rear wheels and how light they are. Alright, here comes Scott Newton coming around to complete lap 8. He comes into the pits right at the halfway point, scheduled pit stop. Will lose the lead if Clayton McLeod stays out, but he shouldn't be too worried about that.
Yeah, I don't think so as well. The gap between those two drivers was up to 10 seconds when Scott Newton came in from his pit stop, so already a second more than it was last time around. Clayton McLeod is not taking his pit stop, so at least for one lap in this race, the Canadian will take the lead and the professional championship lead as well, I think, if he continues now. Scott Newton is coming to a halt at his pit stop. Now, even though it is still halfway to go, these are very short pit stops. He gets up the jacks, gets some new tires, gets some new fuel. It's just a few seconds before he gets going again. Back on the ground, now he gets rolling again. With that short pit stop, it's still well in front of Danilo Sanfilippo. So Scott Newton, with his pit stop, comes out in P2, losing one position, but is just waiting for Clayton McLeod to visit his pit crew, and he will once again inherit that lead of the race.
Yeah, Clayton McLeod, our race leader, and the driver down in 6th, Manuel Gomez Esteban, are the only two drivers yet to make their scheduled stop. Everyone 2nd through 5th has. Now, you mentioned the points here, and how much is this going to help Scott Newton and Clayton McLeod in the championship? The honest answer is we don't know, because this is done based off of iRacing's official point structure, which official iRacing point structure, which differs based on the strength of field, based on how many cars show up. So a win is worth a different amount of points at every single race this season, and these drivers might not necessarily know how many points they'll get for a win today, but they know it pays more than second, and so that's why Clayton McLeod and Scott Newton will be doing the best they can to try and gain all those points and claw them back at Mark Usher. And right now, things are looking better for Newton out here on track.
Absolutely, as Andrew DeSantis, as we were talking, gets underway again. He's connected back in his car. He gets out again. Now he's currently 3 laps down to Scott Newton. I don't think that Andrew has to make a pit stop anymore. So he will at least overtake Tommy Nikonhola, who's 1 lap in front of him, but of course is out of the race. And then after that, it's just bringing that car home for Andrew DeSantis, trying to get as much points as possible. And one of the things that you mentioned, Sam, is completely true. The drivers do not know how many points they will get for a victory. It is based on the amount of drivers, the strength of field. Now looking at the strength of field today, it's a little bit less than 2,200. That is one of the lowest strength of fields I've seen this season, which means that the driver, the winner, in the end of the race will not get as much points as it did for other races. And that will help, for example, Mark Usher, Thomas Seeger, who doesn't score a lot of points this race. It will, of course, still help Scott Newton, Clayton McLeod, because they get the maximum amount of points possible, but it's not as much as it was in other races.
Now, the good news for McLeod and Newton isn't what you think it would be, and Clayton McLeod stays out for another lap. But the good news, the advantage they have, Johan, is I'm pretty sure both of them have been involved in crashes or had really bad finishes this season. Why is that good news? Well, it means that getting a good points result today will make bring their points up a good chunk. You know, if their drop weeks were already good results, it would be hard for them to build on that 80-point deficit that they're sitting back of Mark Usher. But, like I say, that they've both been involved in a little bit of trouble throughout the season. So hopefully, when we get to Spa next week, we'll see the championships a bit tighter. And we'll also see if Mark Usher is able to come there, and I think he's won every single time he's shown up, so that won't be looking too good for the rest of the field if he shows up at Spa, championship-wise, for their chances to take the points lead away from him. However, if he doesn't, it's going to get very interesting, although maybe a little less of a threat from Thomas Seeger with what's happened to him here today, currently being shown in 9th place.
Yeah, the good thing for Thomas Seeger at least is that he still has 2 drop weeks that he could use. He didn't make 2 races of the 10 before this one, so that means that he has 2 drop weeks left for the final races of the season. The fact that Mark Usher didn't show up today, that's really hurting him, is really gonna hurt him for the championship battle, because he already missed 4 races, and with this one being the 5th, that means that one of his 8 counted results in the championship will be a 0 score. And well, winning the race, of course, nets you basically 100-120 points on average, something between those lines. Having a 0 result on that's really gonna matter a lot. You might win all those other races that you participate in, but that one result being so poorly, that might give the advantage to Clayton McLeod and Thomas Seeger just enough advantage to actually close down the gap to Usher and overtaking him in the championship battle.
Yeah, the unfortunate news for the competition and the good news from Mark Usher today is that as you mentioned, lower strength of field today means a win probably isn't going to be worth 120 points today. So, again, we'll have to see how it all shapes up when we get into Spa. Still waiting for our race leader Clayton McLeod to come in. Wouldn't be surprised if he does it at the end of this lap number 11 of our 15-lap race. However, Scott Newton has been running him down, which doesn't make a whole lot of difference in the first place, to be honest. It looks like we all know Scott Newton's going to win this race anyway, but it's just showing you, even on this pace with a heavy fuel tank, Newton is able to outrun Scott Newton on a light fuel tank, granted McLeod on the light fuel tank, but McLeod also racing out there with worn tyres. Just a really impressive showing so far from Scott Newton, despite a couple of mistakes. We'll see if he can bring it home.
Yeah, Scott Newton is very comfortable here in France. A driver that's not feeling as comfortable as Manuel Gomez Esteban. He's currently coming in from his pit stop as Clayton McLeod, almost lapping that driver, also comes in for his pit stop. So both of the final 2 drivers remaining coming in to visit the pit crew for the one and hopefully only time today, as they're coming through this very long pit straight. Now Scott Newton at the same time, he is coming across the corner. He is passing Clayton McLeod now for the lead. So that's the Australian back to the lead of the race as Manuel gets going again. Clayton McLeod gets stopping. He will lose, of course, that leads to Clayton McLeod, but over a 75-second lead we have in P3 Danilo Sanfilippo. The Canadian doesn't have anything to fear, and he will resume the race here now in P2.
Yeah, we didn't anticipate a whole lot of lap traffic today, obviously, with as big as the circuit is. Manuel Gomez Esteban's been a little bit off the pace, so he will go a lap down, but with so fewer cars on the circuit and such big gaps between them and so many good overtaking opportunities, I don't exactly anticipate that he'll cause an issue for any of our drivers out there. And credit where it's due, I mean, he's still surviving out there, running in 6th position right now.
He won 5 positions during the race, and that's just not making the mistakes that other people did make during the race. He's still racing for that P6 position with Andrew Dersalis, who's currently 2 laps behind him. And I think that Manuel will see that one out. He will be the one finishing in P6 as long as he doesn't make any big mistakes, hangs it in the wall. But like they say, other drivers did make those mistakes, and he's profiting from that out there, winning 5 positions in the process. Same can be said, however, for Rolf Just. He, of course, started in P10, 1 position in front of Manuel Gomez. And he's another driver that didn't make any mistakes out there. He won 5 positions during the race. We can see Rolf Just on screen now. That's Manuel Gomez Esteban. With Rolf Just as well, not making any mistakes, winning 5 positions. Coming home here with a very nice top 5 positions if it finishes like it is now.
A little over 4 laps left to go for our race leader Scott Newton in the penultimate round of the Batteries Not Included Championship here on the iRacing Esports Network. I'm Samuel Ryman. Alongside me in the booth is Johan van den Beld from the Global SimRacing Channel, broadcasting this race for you with our director Sean Ambrose doing all of the button pushing behind the scenes, and our cameras provided by Dougie Beard as they have been all season long. We hope you've been enjoying this season. We've definitely seen some chaotic races throughout the year. We've seen some great battles up front, different winners. It hasn't been Marcus every time. And today it looks like it'll be Scott Newton, but we've seen Newton prone to mistakes, even unpressured ones, during the course of the year. Hopefully he doesn't run into another one of those today, because he's holding on to a good lead for what could be a decent points day here for him, even if he's not able to get close enough to Usha to win the championship in Spa. This could get him up there in the mix with Usha, and especially Thomas Ziegler, who is out of a race for a battle for second and third in the points. Less than 4 laps left to go for Newton now, who just clicked off the fastest lap of a race.
And that just really shows that Scott Newton is not really worried, I think, about Clayton McLeod behind him. He's also not really trying to consolidate the lead that he has. He just wants to get all-out screamer laps, qualifying laps almost, and get as quick as possible. And just to put that lap time that we put in just now in perspective, that 3:04.7 would still be enough to get pole position in qualifying. It's incredible lap time from Scott Newton. Incredible pace the Australian is showing. He's only 7/10 slower than he was himself in qualifying. And with only 4 laps to go, he's showing no signs of slowing down as he's coming through the first chicane here on the Mulsanne straight. The gap between him and Clayton McLeod, as you can see on top of the screen, grown to 21 seconds. Is the biggest gap that we currently have, or that we have seen between the leader and P2. All the drivers out there are driving away from each other a little bit. Danilo Sanfilippo, he's still driving around in P3. That's maybe a driver that we can aim at for a little bit as well, because we mentioned just now, Sam, that Rolf Just, Manuel Gomez, Esteban, those were drivers that didn't make the mistakes that other people made, and well, they profited from that, gaining a lot of positions. But I think that the same can be said for Danilo, because Danilo started the race in P6, won 3 positions during the race because other people made a mistake, and after he inherited that P3 position, he's just staying there. He's really driving almost mature, you would say, not making any mistakes, not taking any risks, and he's well on his way for what I think is actually his first podium of the season, which is not a bad result here at the moment.
Yeah, I think he had a couple of scares earlier on in the race. With both of Sanfilippo's main fins interesting towards the end, but as you mentioned, Danilo's been able to make it through, running 3rd position, 3 spots from where he started. In fact, if you look at the positions of the cars in 3rd, 4th and 5th, for any of you who like to do math during the race, double their positions, and that's where they started. The driver who started 6th was in 3rd, the driver who started 8th was in 4th, and the driver who started 10th was in 5th. But the driver who started 1st is in 1st, and 2nd is in 2nd. That's Newton and McLeod, are leading their ways around here as we continue to enter the closing laps at Le Mans. But you mentioned a little while ago, Johan, that the lap times that Scott Newton was putting on, that they're pretty much qualifying times. Should he really be doing that with a 20-second lead after the history of what's happened to him throughout this season?
I mean, to be honest, you kind of would say, if you were the team owner of Scott Newton at the moment, it's like, hey, just calm down. We have a nice bottle of cold champagne in the fridge for you. And while I'm saying that, he's going purple again, a 3:04.4 this time. So he's only 4/10 separated from his qualifying time. But yeah, he's really putting the hammer down. And we can argue about it, if it's wise or not, especially if you look at everything that he has to lose. Because looking at the championship, of course, the drivers that we've mentioned from basically all season long are those 3 drivers: Mark Usher, Clayton McLeod and Thomas Ziegler. Now Scott Newton is of course a part of that as well, but he's been hanging down that list a little bit. If he gets a win here today, I think that he will set himself up perfectly to be a 4th competitor, a 4th possible winner of the championship when we reach Spa. So he really needs a good result here if he wants to have that opportunity for the race next week.
There's 2.5 laps left to go for Scott Newton now, holding a 25-second lead over Clayton McLeod. Things have really gotten spread out here with just 5 cars left on the lead lap, or 1 car running a lap down, 1 car running 3 laps down, the rest of the cars out of a race. Obviously this series, as we've gotten towards the end of the season, as is the case with many series on iRacing, the participation count drops off a little bit towards the end of the year once drivers realise they're out of reach for the championship. However, that also depends based on what track we're at. So one thing that will be interesting for next week's race, Johan, is the finale at Spa. I anticipate a lot of cars showing up there because Spa is such a fun racing course to race these Formula One cars around, and that could definitely have huge championship implications too. The more drivers that show up, especially if some of our stronger ones show up, would boost the strength of field, and that will just mean more points on the table and a victory, a bigger haul of points for the victory at our season finale at Spa. So long story short, whatever happens, I don't think this championship is going to end here today, because I think there's going to be a lot up for grabs when we head to Belgium in a week's time.
Absolutely, and we could see it a few hours ago when we had the Lotus 49 race on the GSRC and the iRacing Esport Network, which was also at Spa-Francorchamps, which was a beautiful race, very exciting through the midfield, great battles all race long, and Spa is really one of those tracks that always provides good racing in these Formula 1 cars. And like you say, it's a popular track with a lot of people on iRacing, so you might have a lot of people showing up. As we see Clayton McLeod making a small mistake there. There was on the exit of, Arnash, just going a little bit too much speed in that corner. Luckily for the Canadian, he didn't damage his car. He can continue. It would be a shame for him if his race ended there, because he has a 50-second lead on P3. Just under braking, car slides away from him. Now he gets it going again. You can see it on screen. He's still continuing driving his laps. His victory bid for today is kind of over. The gap between him and Scott Newton has grown to almost 30 seconds, but he's still well on his way for a very good position. As we see Andrew dos Santos, yeah, he had a problem somewhere in the last lap. He of course had that disconnection earlier in the race.
See, brings it into the pits. Is that a result of an incident, or as he gave up on trying to catch up with Esteban? I almost wonder. We just hit 2 laps left to go, Johan. He realises I'm 2 laps by Manuel Gomez Esteban. There's no reason to be out here anymore. Esteban could crash right now and he would still finish in 7th place here.
I think so as well. I think Andrew just liked the idea of taking a shower after a good race out there. We of course see where he finishes this race in P7, but that really doesn't tell you the story of Andrew, because he had such a strong running at the beginning of the race. He was really mixing it up with the likes of Danilo Sanfilippo. He of course was one of the drivers that we usually see on the back of the mid-pack or the beginning of the last drivers on the grid. But here at Le Mans, he was really strong, maybe even on his way for a possible podium position, until he had that unfortunate disconnect in the middle of the race. Otherwise, we might have seen him way further up the grid.
Now, Scott Newton last lap around did not reset the fastest lap of the race. He ran a 2:05.1. I'm starting to see his car do a bit like we saw Clayton McLeod's car do a little bit ago and dance around the racing track, which might not be a good sign. The walls are always quite close around here. A lot of this, you see the lines painted on road are public roads. It's hard to think of this track as a street course, but it is pay a bit at some points. Alright, here's one turn that's been tricking drivers up all race long under the power. Newton though takes it cautiously, and already accelerating 180, 190, now 200 miles an hour, and building before he gets up to the curves. And soon he'll be passing by the start-finish line, getting the 1 lap to go signal here at the Circuit de la Sarthe, holding half a minute lead over Clayton McLeod and almost 1.5 minutes over our 3rd place finisher Danilo Sanfilippo after our provisional 3rd place finisher. Remember, these are Williams Toyotas, and if anyone knows about not counting the chickens before they hatch here at Le Mans, it should be, well, I'll finish that thought. Here we go, last lap for Scott Newton.
Well, 1 more lap to go now. Normally that's around 1.5 minutes, but here of course is over 3 minutes before he will see the checkered flag. So maybe as he actually picks up the slack a little bit, I see there, Sam. He actually puts in the quickest lap time of the race, so 3:04.1. So like we were mentioning, he's less than a tenth away from his qualifying time. Let's see if Scott Newton actually can set that quickest lap time of the race quicker than his qualifying lap. as we are seeing right now on screen, Clayton McLeod is also starting his final lap of the race. But let's put a little bit of emphasis, let's put the spotlight on Stefan Henkel for a second. He's the driver in P4. And that's one of the drivers that we haven't talked about a lot today. Why do I want to talk about Stefan Henkel? He's one of the drivers that didn't show up for a little bit. He drove several races at the beginning of the season, had a best result of P5 when he was there in the Nürburgring, also P7 in Suzuka. Saw him, P4 in Mosport it was. That was his best result of the season. He will now equal his best result of the season here at Le Mans. For someone who is returning for the first time in a while, it's just a very strong, consistent performance here from Stefan Henkel. He was not one of the quickest drivers on the grid. He didn't make any big mistakes. He had one spin in the Dunlop chicane. That was it. Apart from that, he was consistent, and the P4 result must feel good for Stefan to come home with that here in France.
Then about 40 seconds on down the road from him will be Rolf Joost, our final lead lap finisher as it stands, running in 5th place. Again, picked off half of the positions that he had to do this race. Started 10th up into 5th position. So good day for all the drivers who are going to make it to the finish line here today. All up or where they started. Sure, Clayton McLeod would have liked to have taken home the win today to gain a little bit more points over Thomas Ziegler and on Markusha. And to his credit, it could still happen. Scott Newton's not home yet, but he's almost home into one of the last heavy braking zones of the circuit. I say that, there's actually a couple more coming up, but still that run from 215 miles an hour down to a double-digit speed through Indianapolis is always one that's a little bit tricky to get right. And now Scott Newton within. You can probably smell the champagne, taste the champagne rather, though it's got a very distinct smell to it as well from where he is right now. Working his way around the last couple of turns, trying and aiming for his 3rd victory of the season. Will it put him in championship contention? Maybe, maybe not. Will it definitely help him in the standings and give him a shot at 2nd or the 3rd in the points? Definitely, I would say. But will it give him his 3rd win of the championship here today? And your victor at Le Mans? Yes, it will. Scott Newton takes the victory at the Circuit de la Sarre.
And look on top of the screen, he actually went quicker than his qualifying time in that last lap of the race in 3:03.9. What a speed and what a dominance at the end of the race for Scott Newton. On screen now, Clayton McLeod. Well, if Scott Newton wins and dominates, what is the next best you can do? Finishing P2, and the Canadian is bringing home that position today. With Mark Usher not being here, you really have to get a nice haul of points to put some pressure on him for next week at Spa. Clayton McLeod is doing that, finishing P2 here at Le Mans. Good result for him.
And about another minute on down the road, but another good result nonetheless will come from Danilo Sanfilippo. Started 6th. His lap chart, especially for the first half of the race, is going to look interesting. He was dicing it up with all the drivers from 2nd back to about 7th when tight pack there for the first opening few laps of this race. It made it very exciting to watch. Until then, it's probably just been a little bit of enjoying the countryside, having a nice Saturday drive for Danilo Sanfilippo. But I'm sure he's been doing it with a smile on his face, because he is just a couple of turns away from taking a podium position here in France. Out onto the straight, just 2 chicanes left to go. No, 3rd one if you count those, that easy right and left right there. Danilo Sanfilippo coming through the chicanes now, avoiding the curbs, keeping his car in pristine condition as he takes it across the line and finishes in 3rd position here at Le Mans.
Stefan Henkel, we just talked about what a good performance he had here on his return to the Batteries Not Included series. Well, like we said, he will probably be quite happy with that P4 position. Winning 4 positions in the progress as well, Stefan Henkel. Don't forget, that is also a nice feeling when you just gain that many positions in the race. He comes over the start-finish line, P4 in the end for the GS driver.
And with Manuel Gomez Esteban already finishing a lap down, this will solidify 5th place for Rolf Droost. He could pull it to a halt here if he wanted and still come home in 5th. However, that's not the way he wants to finish this race off. He wants to finish it by taking the checkered flag here at Le Mans. Who doesn't want to see that? Definitely always an achievement, whether you're racing for 40 minutes or for 24 hours. And Rolf Droost doing as the 4 drivers across the line ahead of him have done before, and working his way through the last couple of turns in the 111 car. And definitely a strong performance from today. He wasn't able to turn a clean lap in qualifying, so had to start at the back. But comes home with a top 5 finish here. And that's going to wrap all the action up here from the Circuit de la Sarthe in Le Mans, France. But stick with us with driver interviews and the full race rundown coming right up. Hello and welcome back to the Circuit de la Sarthe. It's definitely an interesting race today. A lot of action towards the start and very few survivors at the end making it to the checkered flag. And Scott Newton did so with a half a minute win over Clayton McLeod. Danilo Sanfilippo rounded up the podium in 3rd ahead of Stefan Henkel and Rolf Droost were the last 2 drivers on the lead lap. 1 lap down was Manuel Gomez Esteban, Johan.
Yeah, and then there's a few drivers that didn't finish the race, starting with Andrew Adair Sanders. He comes home P7 in the end, winning 2 positions after that unfortunate disconnect we had in the middle of the race. Tommy Miko and Hola saw Track Sky after his big crash in the Mulsanne straight. He's classified in P8. Thomas Seeger, also one of the drivers, one of the championship contestants who saw his race end prematurely. He's finishing at P9. Marco Sanfilippo, another driver with a big crash in the Mulsanne straight. He is classified in P10. The last driver out there, Reed Miller, he tried to repair his car during the race. Wasn't meant to be. He finishes last in P11 here at Circuit de la Sarthe.
The driver finished first is called up with us right now. Congratulations, your 3rd win of the season, Scott Newton.
Yeah, hey Sam. To be honest, certainly wasn't expecting an easy win today. Track conditions were quite entertaining to say the least, given the low downforce configuration. But I just had to put the car on pole and break away as quick as I could, and thankfully I was able to do that today.
Did you have voices in your head arguing those closing laps? Because you were setting off qualifying times and at the end of a race set a 3:03, but surely something must have been saying, hey, I had a good race going last week and, threw it away with a spin. I mean, how cautious were you being in those closing laps there?
Oh, I knew that in the first stint, on the heavier fuel load, took, I think, just shy of 57 or 58 kilograms, which is out of reach for this car. And it's all about lockups in this car, especially in the front. inside tyres and all that sort of thing, trying to get the turn in, especially with the minimum downforce that we're running here, which is enabling us to get up to anywhere from about 340 to 350 kilometers an hour. So as long as I was able to tame the brake point for most of the race, which I managed to do, despite getting a slowdown penalty on, I think it's the Ford chicane, I think, in the first couple of laps, and then adjusting the fuel and not watching where I was going into the second part of the Mulsanne. So, it was just mainly watching the tyre temperatures and all that sort of thing that now enabled me to pull away and manage the gap. But then in the second part of the race, it was just a lower fuel, having to take only 43 kilos to make it to the end. Obviously, with the lighter car, you can go just that little bit quicker, and just having that little bit of confidence as well. The track conditions sort of cooled down just that little bit, that enabled me to get that extra second at the start of the race pace that I had.
Yeah, let's go back to the very, very start of a race. How critical was it for you to get a good start and lead through the first couple of turns? Because that stopped drivers from challenging you on the Mulsanne straight.
Yeah, absolutely. The last couple of rounds, I haven't had too bad a start. It's just the fact that the guys behind me or around me, with Mark and Clayton, and that have gotten as good or even better start. So just having to watch the ping in those cases. But here I knew that as long as they didn't run too deep, but run too short on the braking point, that allowed the people to catch up and just get the right run through turn 2 or the Dunlop chicane, and then power out, because I saw that onto the Mulsanne, I think I had a 1 to 1.4 second gap already. So I don't know whether the other guys behind me had issues or whether it was just being in the tow and the minimum downforce configuration that allowed me to get away in the first place.
All right. Well, congrats on your win today, Scott. Probably going to help you out in the points battle as well, if not for the championship, for second or third. So we look forward to seeing you back next week at Spa, hopefully, and see where you end up.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Sam. Today the win was critical. I don't think that I'll be in the hunt for the championship, given the fact that I think Mark's taken 6 wins at least whilst I've been on the track. So we'll just have to see how the SOF plays out and how the points are divvied up this week. But I'll certainly be back for next week, and hope to see you all there. Cheers for that.
All right, that was our race winner, Scott Newton. Got one more interview. Johan, you've called up with Andrew Adair Saunders.
Andrew, welcome to the booth. A little bit of a double-sided race for you, because the result, I would say, was a little bit unfortunate, P7, but the racing that you had at the beginning was really good.
Yeah, very good, actually, and really disappointing. That's the result you get when your equipment fails on you. Well, I didn't expect to be that good today. I was fighting for positions I shouldn't have been, but if everything would have kept together, I'm sure I could have battled with Stefan Henkel on P4, but that didn't happen. What can I else say? Congrats to Scott Newton and the rest that kept it together without having their equipment fail. Well,
it's a shame to see what happened with you, but like you mentioned as well, your race was really good. You were battling it up with Danilo, with Stefan Henkel at the beginning of the race. Is that something that has to do with the track? Do you really feel comfortable here at Le Mans compared to other tracks?
Well, I couldn't say for certain, as I haven't driven Le Mans that many times. Only once in the only once in the Pro Tour GT series, and twice the iRacing 24 Hours at Le Mans, and once in the iRacing Grand Prix series. But I never considered myself to be that good on it compared to other tracks. Of course, today's information sheds another light. Maybe yes, but I would need to run a lot more races here at Le Mans to be absolutely certain.
Very good. Well, next week is the season finale at Spa-Francorchamps. We'll hope to see you again, and hopefully without the disconnection next year.
Thank you very much. I'll try to make it at Spa.
That was Andrew Saunders, our P7 finisher today here at Circuit de la Sarthe.
Alright, so just one round left to go in the championship, and you heard it from our race winner here today, Scott Newton. Even he's unsure of what exactly the championship scenario is going to look like at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. We will find out next week. Alright, before we leave today, we would like to thank Clayton McLeod as well as the iRacing Esports Network and all of the organisers and the competitors of the Batteries Not Included Championship for coming out today and putting on a great show. We would also like to thank all of the companies that provide the software and hardware for all our broadcasts, and you can see those all listed on your screen. Additional thanks goes out to Eric Ekholm and June Lalonde to provide us with our music. See the screen for how to get hold of more of that great work. Thanks to the team today, Sean, Johan and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, you can visit us on globalsimracingchannel.com, or also on Twitter at GSR Channel, and be sure to like us on Facebook and check us out on Instagram at GSRC_gram. All of the upcoming races for our other series are listed on your screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar, and don't miss another second of exciting racing action. But until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.